Morning, everybody. First off, I just want to say thanks a lot for everyone taking time out of your busy lives to come down and spend a day and a half or 2 days talking hockey. I know most of us are going to be talking hockey every day for the next 6 or 7 months. I've heard some great presentations, lots of good ideas from previous presenters, and some of the stuff I'm going to talk about this morning is going to tie right into that. So I've been with Hockey Canada since 1997, and so just over 20 years. Been fortunate to probably experience everything from the 5-year-old who's crying their first time on the ice because they think the ice is too slippery, to spending weeks working with Sidney Crosby or John Tavares or Steven Stamkos doing skill stuff. So my main role is working on developing coaches so we can develop players. And for me, it's very important to be on the ice, to be active, so when we're trying to present and give people ideas, we know what we're talking about because we're living it every day. So this year I'm also coaching an Atom team. And I don't have kids in Atom, but again, in the minor hockey world, I think if we're putting programs together for coaches and parents and players, it's very important that we are in the rinks, living it just like all of you guys are every day. So we just had our evaluation and tryout process finished in Calgary probably in the last week. And we've gone through a process in our association that I think works really well. I'm going to go through some of the tools, some of the concepts, and some of the philosophies of player development that I think have to happen before the kids even step on the ice. And to me, those are some of the things that I think we need to use to set the table. So at Hockey Canada, it's lead, develop, and promote positive hockey experiences. Doesn't matter if you're a player, if you're a coach, if you're a parent, if you're a trainer, if you're an official. Hockey has to be an enjoyable experience. It has to be fun. And for all of you that have either gone through evaluations and tryouts or are going to go through it, you know that's probably one of the most stressful times of the year. Parents are wound up, kids are wound up, they want to make this team, coaches are worried about which team they're going to get. Then you always have the component where this player didn't make this team, this player did, why, is it politics, is it this, is it that? You've all heard all the reasons. And those are some things that I think with a proper player evaluation or tryout process, you can eliminate a lot of those problems right off the bat. Number one, long-term player development. If we could sum up long-term player development in one sentence, it's keeping as many kids playing at as high a level as possible for as long as possible. Our system right now, not just in hockey, in North America, in all sports, is let's cut, cut, cut. We spend too much time telling too many 8- and 9-year-olds that you're not good enough. You're not going to make this team, you're not going to make this team, you're not going to make this team. That in turn causes stress by parents because they all think if I don't make the top team, we're not going to get as much ice time, we're not going to get as good at coaching, all the things you guys have all heard before. But the key thing is we need to get to a point where we don't just have one AAA team or one A team or one number 1 team, but we have 2. We want to get as many kids as young as possible playing as high a level as possible. The sooner we get down to best on best, we limit creativity, we limit success. There is nothing wrong with players at any level who are scoring lots of goals, who are getting lots of points. But our system is so geared towards cutting, 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 then all of a sudden we get to the 13, 14, 15 stage, and we've told so many kids that they're not good enough anymore that they don't want to play. Our system is really a pyramid. We have a wide base of kids that start, and all along the way, we tell them, you're not good enough. Our system should be a house. It should be straight walls up to a certain point, and then yes, we do have to cut down and narrow our focus as far as tiering the kids, but it happens way too soon. And so in our system, when we look at our national level programs, under 17 is the first step in Canada where we bring our best kids together. We bring 112 kids at the under 17 level together from across the country. We have 500,000 kids in this country playing the game. We should have more than that. What we've done is we end up reducing ourselves to the same size as Finland or Sweden or the Czech Republic. Because at under 17, they bring in 100 kids. But it's a derivative of our system where we have this need or this want to only have one AAA team. in all of our organizations. And I'm from Calgary, so I'll pick on Calgary. We're a city of 1.2 million people. We only have 5 midget AAA teams. We should have 10. Who cares if a kid's getting 100 points a year? Everybody talks about, oh, it's getting watered down, it's getting watered down. Well, now we're at the point in that league now where the top players are getting 50 points in 35 games, 60 points in 35 games. Because the competition level is higher, kids aren't having as much success, kids aren't getting as many points, and what that happens is coaches start to strategize, and it becomes so system and structure focused that the creativity and the things that we want these kids to show isn't being utilized. So we need to make sure we get as many kids playing at as high a level as possible for as long as possible. From an association standpoint, it's very important that you can try and establish some consistency and some standardization. So by implementing a standardized technical curriculum and methodology for instruction, your association is going to build that foundation for athletes. And to me, that starts with player evaluation, starts with tryouts. Putting a system in place that is transparent, that everybody knows exactly what's going on, and furthermore than the evaluation or tryouts from the players, it comes down to the development after those kids are placed on a team. That is actually the most important part. What are the coaches going to do with those kids to make them better? Another pet peeve of mine. We are in such a hurry to get the season going. First week of September. In many places, especially in the larger centers, it's the first week of school. It is also the first week of tryouts. Well, the first week of school is stressful enough for kids. New classes, kids may be in their class, may not, new teachers. We also say, oh, by the way, here's penny number 10. Don't screw up so you don't get cut tonight. Exact wrong message we should be sending to kids. We don't need to be in a hurry to start the season only to have the season over in the middle of February, because now we're going into round after round after round of playoffs. We should be easing kids into the season. Every player should have at least 5 or 10 sessions of hockey school. Sign up in your association. Coaches are on their ice. Kids are all going through practices. Coaches get to know the kids. Kids get to know the coaches. There's no pressure. Yes, there's going to be informal evaluation going on, talking about this player's a good skater, this guy's got a good shot, she's really good with the puck. But it doesn't need to be a formal process. The other thing with that is you level the playing field for kids. We all know the kids who have gone to 6 weeks of hockey schools before tryouts, and they look really, really good September 4th. And we see the other kids who maybe spent all summer on the golf course or on their skateboard or on the lake. They got brand new skates. They don't look so good September 4th. But the reality of it is you don't have to look, shouldn't say that, you shouldn't have to look good September 4th. What matters is where you are in December, where you are in February, where you are at the end of the year. So in our long-term player development, our seasonal structure, we're really trying to promote that there's no reason to start our tryouts that early. Let's give all the kids a chance to get on the ice, get going. For you guys in minor hockey associations, another 2 weeks to get yourselves organized isn't going to hurt either. It's stressful enough trying to get together rosters and decide which kids are in which group and when their tryout skate is, when their second one is. Give yourselves more time. Give yourselves more time to get prepared, to get organized, and ease that stress level. As I mentioned, the beginning of the season is stressful enough. We don't need to have kids getting into tryouts right now. The NHL teams are still going through that process. It's a longer process there than it is in most minor hockey associations. In a lot of cases, kids get 1 skate, 2 skates, 3 skates. Oh, sorry, you're going down to the next team. Every player needs a chance to develop instead of trying to go out there and not make a mistake, because that's what happens. They're going out there trying not to fall down because they're worried if I fall down, the coach is going to put a little tick on the sheet and it's going to be a black mark against me. We have parents who are telling the kids, when you get out there, you just get the puck and you don't worry about anyone else. You just keep it as long as you can because you got to make yourself stand out. All those things that we've all seen. So we need to make sure we can try and adapt the beginning of the season so it is more conducive to more kids having a chance for success. This is a sample for an Atom seasonal structure that we put together. Okay? We're proposing at the start of the season approximately 6 weeks once a team is picked to go through, get a bunch of practices, maybe a couple exhibition games. Okay? Give the coaches a chance after their team is actually picked to work with the players. What do we need to work on? If you say your defensemen need to work on quick feet, you're not going to make that happen in one practice. Give them time to develop those types of things before the formal game starts. Because as soon as formal game starts, now there's pressure to win. And Reed and I were talking the other night. Unfortunately, in this country, in a lot of places, if you don't win enough games, they're not going to let you volunteer next year. We need to get past that mentality as well. Let's ease ourselves into this season. Lots of practice, a few games, more games at the end of the season when it should be a higher level of competition, a higher level of intensity. But the key thing at the start of the year is give the kids 5 skates, 8 skates, 10 skates before the formal evaluation starts. Now you're going to get a chance to see where these kids are at. You're going to level the playing field. Once they get from there, then you can get into your formal evaluation, and I'll show you some of the different tools and things that we promote that people use. But your evaluation should be a combination of gameplay and skills. It has to be both. It can't be all skill, it can't be all games. But at the end of the day, a formal process that is transparent, make sure everyone knows what's going on, is very, very important. Talk about talent identification. Reed mentioned this last night too. Talent ID is about keeping kids around long enough to actually find out what they can do. We could take 20 coaches from this room, we can go to a rink this afternoon and we could put 20 kids on the ice, and almost everyone could probably pick out the top 12 or top 15 kids today. That's player selection, that's not talent identification. Talent identification is trying to determine who is going to be the best at the end of the year, next year, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. That's ultimately where we want to try and get to. You do not have to be good as an 8-year-old. You don't have to be good as a 10-year-old. You don't even really have to be good as a 12-year-old. It's not until you're 13 or 14 when players need to start to really show the promise, where players really need to determine, yes, I think I can be good at this sport. I want to put the time and the commitment in to keep getting better. The number of kids who were the best player at 10, who are no longer the best at 16, is enormous in this country. A lot of you have seen it. I've seen it many times in all the cycles I've gone through minor hockey, where the kid who was the best in novice at 8 years old isn't the best at 14. The challenge we have is by cutting too many kids too early, we don't give a lot of those kids who aren't the best at when they're 8 the opportunity 3, 4, 5, 6 years later to still be in the same stream, to get the same opportunity to actually reach their potential. And that's a huge problem. The number of players in the Western Hockey League who were first round, second round, third round draft picks who never played a game is enormous. The number of players who go on to have unbelievable NHL careers who were never ever drafted in the Western Hockey League at 14 is huge. Shea Weber, Jerome McGinley, Tyler Ennis, we could go on and on and on about all these guys who were never drafted at 14. They started getting good at 14, they got better at 15, they got better at 16, where they made it. We are missing a huge amount of the potential of very, very good young boys and girls who could play at a higher level if they were given a greater opportunity when they were young. Instead of just saying, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. That's part of the reason we see so many kids leaving the game at the Bantam age group. If I don't make Bantam AA, or if I don't make Bantam AAA, well, I'm probably not going to make it. Because many times coaches are just looking at, well, where did he play last year? Played community or played house league? We're probably not going to take him. But there's a lot of potential there. We need to make sure we try and maximize that. Once your teams are picked, if you pick that player, you have to play him. Absolutely have to play him. Too many times, again, we see kids who don't get out there in the last minute of a period, who don't get out there in the last 2 minutes of a game. Kids are getting benched. The best goalie magically gets in all the good games. It's a coach's responsibility to make sure if you pick a player that you play him. And a huge part of that comes down from the messaging from minor hockey associations is to ensure that there is equal and fair playing time. Yes, there's going to be behavioral problems or kids missing practices or bad penalties where there has to be a consequence, and ice time is usually the best consequence a coach can put out there. But lack of skill should not be a reason for a player not to get on the ice. Because all you're doing when you do that is you're just widening your gap in your skill. The kids who don't get on the ice only 2 or 3 shifts a period, okay, versus the kids who are getting 6 or 8, it's no wonder that the gap gets wider and wider when we do that. So we have to make sure that the kids are all getting fair and equal ice time. They all pay the same amount of money. We had our first parent meeting with our Adam team, and I said to the parents the other night, if anyone in here thinks that your son deserves more ice time than the next one, I suggest you start writing checks to those people. Because you're getting more ice time, you're going to pay more. Well, that just stops the conversation right there, because there's not a single person out there that's actually going to do that. But we need to get past that mentality. They all deserve a chance to be on the power play. They all deserve a chance to be on penalty kill. They all deserve a chance to be out there in the last minute. Because what happens is we select our teams. We just want to play our best players because that's an easy thing to do. You have no understanding of what that really does when it affects kids. They go to school the next day, and there's people saying, you never even got to play in the third period. You're not on this situation, you're not on that situation. Our goal is to develop all these kids. We have no idea at 8 years old or 10 years old who's going to be the best hockey player. People will tell you they think they know. And those people would end up being the highest paid scout in the NHL for sure, if they could actually predict which of these kids is going to end up being the best. There's first round picks in the NHL this year that are never going to play a game in the NHL. There's going to be players who were never drafted who are going to go on to Hall of Fame careers. Marty St. Louis is a perfect example of a guy who's going in. So the truth of the matter is we just don't know. So what we need to do is give kids a longer opportunity to see what they can actually do. Reed talked about this. Youth sports coaches claim to be great talent identifiers and point to the results of their 11-year-olds all-star team as proof. They're not talent identifiers, they're talent selectors. And that's something philosophically that I think an organization should be looking at. How do we try and identify kids who are going to be good long-term and keep them in the sport long enough so we can see what they can really do? Talent selection is the culling of players with the current ability to participate and be successful in events taking place in the near future. Talent identification, on the other hand, is the prediction of the future performance. It is much more difficult, it's a harder thing to do, but your associations, your players, will be better off for it if we look at that as the focus versus who is the best today. Talent identification is an art. Seen this one a few times. Current win at all costs youth sports culture promotes talent selection. For all of us that have been coaching, we've all had the year where we start off and we lose the first 4 or 5 games. And you're walking through the lobby of the rink and you can hear parents talking, power play's terrible, we can't do this, we can't do this, we can't get out of our own zone. And for minor hockey coaches, you start to feel the pressure. So they start to put a plan together to make sure we don't lose as bad next week as we did this week, versus sticking to the plan and trying to develop those players. Talent selectors, okay, are coaches that are going to try and select the kids so they can win now. Make the coach feel good about their ego, when it shouldn't be about that at all. It should be about trying to go through and see how we can develop those players. A lot of times it's naturally select the biggest, strongest, fastest young athletes. We heard Bob talk about it, Reed talk about it. You know, in novice a lot of times, or Adam, the fastest player gets the puck, goes down the wall, gets a shot on net. It's successful, so they keep doing it over and over and over. What they don't do is learn the finer points of the game. And we talked, Barry Trotz was talking about that in the video as well. One of the reasons why we've gone to the cross ice and the half ice at novice is to develop more of the skills that they're going to need for later on in the game. It is about acceleration and agility and quickness versus just a player who can skate in a straight line all the way down the ice. But in evaluations, those are the players that stand out. And so what we need to do is try and make sure that we have a process or a format in place where we can actually look at who do we think is going to be the best player later on. So from a minor hockey association standpoint, I think it's important to have vision, have your mission goals. What do we want our evaluations to be? Is it to be just putting our kids in groups, tiering them, putting our best kids here, our second best, our third best? Or do we actually want to have a process where we want to try and determine the fact that we want to give everyone the best chance to reach their potential. Timelines. It's very important that everyone puts together timelines so it's very, very clear, so parents understand, so coaches understand, this is our evaluation process, this is how many skates we're going to get, this is what we're going to do. Criteria. It's important that you have consistent criteria. Some of you are going to be using internal evaluators, coaches or parents. Some of you might go outside and find other evaluators. But it's very important if you have two people sitting there watching a player that I don't think this player is a 2 out of 5 and this one thinks they're a 4 out of 5. So you want to get some criteria in place to identify this is how we're going to categorize. This is how we're going to classify this player's skill set. So we're talking apples to apples when we actually go to place kids on teams. Tools. There's lots of evaluation tools out there. I'm going to show you some of the ones that we use, some of the ones we promote with minor hockey associations nationally. There's lots of organizations out there. You guys have a group in Manitoba here, Max Analytics. Okay? There's a lot of groups out there that have done good jobs to put together evaluation criteria so it's consistent and it's standardized. Then your action plan is actually putting this into place. So how do we do it? What do we do? What are the things we need to look at? Second of all, and these are probably the 3 biggest questions that minor hockey associations have to deal with at the end of the year, or beginning of the year, sorry. Grouping of players. Do we tier them? Do we go AAA, AA, A, or level 1, level 2, level 3? It all depends on your numbers. Smaller associations, you might only have 1 team, you might only have 2 teams, you might only have 3 teams. So then the question comes down to, what are we going to do? Are we going to create an A team, a B team, and a C team, or are we going to balance 3 teams? That's a question that is often very, very difficult to answer at the start of the year, but in my opinion, that's where the associations, those around you that you're going to play with, all come to an agreement. How are we going to put our teams together? Are we all going to try and balance those 2 Atom teams we have, or those 2 Pee Wee teams, or are we going to have an A team and a B team? And whatever you decide is going to be what works best for your communities that you play against. But I would suggest that no matter how you divide the kids, every single group gets the same number of practices, they get the same number of games, they get the same access to coaching and opportunities and resources. So if you do have a group that is an A group and a B group, they all deserve the same opportunity. Typically what happens right now is your A team or your AAA teams get extra practice every couple of weeks, they get more games, they go to more tournaments. So again, we're just widening the gap. Good example in the school system. Kids go to school at the end of the year, one child decides they're going to take summer classes, the other one doesn't. They come out of grade 4 level. By the time they grade start 5, the one who took summer classes, extra reading, this and that, gets a little bit ahead. They go through grade 5, they stay at that same difference. But again, summer school or extra things, that player gets better. So we have to try and make sure that we provide equal opportunities, equal ice time, equal access, so that kids are all moving along. Tiering of teams. How do you do it? Again, it comes down to who are you playing against. And from a national level, Hockey Canada standpoint, I think it's important that kids are grouped according to skill. It makes it easier for the kids, it makes it easier for the coaches. If you have enough players, you want to put like-skilled players together. It's very hard for coaches when you have a gap in your skill level that is so big where you have some kids who can't pass and receive and the other kids can do great. So wherever possible, try and group your kids according to skill. But again, make sure they all get the same number of practices, the same number of games. In many cases, you will see kids who currently might start off the year at a lower skill level will improve faster than the ones who are more skilled, providing they are given the same opportunities. So tiering of teams is absolutely a good concept. The other thing, when we talked about the second or third slide about a consistent technical curriculum in an association, it's important if you tier the teams that you sit down with all the coaches and say, these are the skills, these are the drills, these are the things that we're going to work on. So now it becomes less of a big deal for the parents as to which team their players get placed on when they know the coaches from the top team are working on these skills, the coaches from the second team are still working on those skills, the coaches from the third team are still working on the same skills. What you do now is you eliminate some of the perceptions that The kids on the top team are always getting better coaching. The kids on the top team are getting more ice time. So in our association in Calgary, we have 10 Atom teams. We sit down and we say, here's a core set of drills that all of us are doing. So the top Atom team, the middle Atom team, the bottom team, we're all doing the same thing. We all need to skate. We all need to handle the puck. We all need to be able to pivot and transition. Yes, the kids at the top are going to do it a little bit faster and a little bit quicker, but by giving everyone the same opportunity, the kids on the lower level teams are actually going to improve more, and they're going to improve quicker because they have more room for improvement. So what that's done in our association is have parents less worried about, am I on the 2 team or the 3 team? Well, you know what, he's got more friends on the 3 team, and these coaches are all doing the same drills anyway, so we're happy with that. So if you have that opportunity, sit down with your coaches after player selection or evaluations and get together and try and put down a plan on these are the core skills and drills that we should all be doing. That way you eliminate some of those issues as well. Player movement is another one. In your organization, do you affiliate players up? Do you allow a player from a 2 team to go up and play with a 1 team from time to time, or a 3 team from a 2 team? Even if it happens to be in your area or your league where you don't allow it, internally in your organization, there is nothing wrong with having 3 players from a 2 team go up and practice with the 1 team, 3 players from a 3 team go practice with a 2 team. Practice your teams together on the ice instead of just trying to get full ice practices all the time. There again, you're giving more kids more of an opportunity to play at higher levels, to participate, to feel like they have a chance, to see what it's like to be up there. At the end of the day, your strength of your association is keeping all those people there. You don't want people to leave because they're not on this team or they're not on that team. You want to try and get it to a point where they all feel like they have an opportunity. And it's a practice that we use all the time. In our association, we go down to the 3 team and say, hey, you got 3 players who might want to practice with us today? Yeah, and we just rotate it through. And we go to the 2 team and say, is there 3 players or 4 players that want to come up and practice? Yep. Invite the coaches out so they can see, yeah, we're doing the exact same thing. And for those of you in the larger centers, you know, your Brandons or your Winnipegs, just like in Calgary, we don't get very many full ice practices. Everything is shared with another team. But when we go out there with that other team, we've got a philosophy in place in our organization that we're using the ice surface as one big group with 30 players with 8 coaches. We don't just want our 1 team staying on their half of the ice doing whatever it is they're doing, and our team staying on our half of the ice doing whatever it is that we're doing. Again, it just perpetuates the perception for parents that the different levels mean more than what they should. Because at the end of the day, tiering, grouping, balancing of teams is all about meaningful competition. Meaningful competition is defined as going into a game, the outcome is somewhat doubtful. So we want to try and make competition where it is actually competitive. After a while, winning games 10-1 is only slightly more fun than losing games 10-1. So what we want to try and do is put all our teams in situations where when we go down the road and play the next team, that competition on the outcome of the game is going to be somewhat in doubt. Now obviously that's not going to happen in all situations just based on various factors, but our goal of grouping players, balancing teams, tiering teams should all be about trying to get meaningful competition. That's how we get better. That's how other teams get better. Reed mentioned it. Okay? It's about trying to make sure that we are developing the kids. So from the process, very important that they have a clear timeline. Don't keep anything a secret. Post it on websites. Make sure all the parents understand this is our timeline for tryouts. This is the process we're going to go through. What is the selection criteria? And I'm going to show you some video of some of the drills that we use and that we promote from a national level. Basic drills that you can use to evaluate and see where your kids are at so you can get some consistency. They're drills that can be done at the novice level all the way up through midget through junior. We use them with our under 17 national team program. But having a clear selection criteria. What is it that we're actually going to use to determine the skill level of the kids? If you go only pure skill, you will see kids that look great going around pylons, they're fast in a straight line, all of a sudden you get them into a game and they don't show up. The hockey sense is lacking a little bit. If you do only game components, you will only see the kids who at this point can really compete, They maybe show up in games, but they lack a lot of technical skill, which will hurt them later on. So it's important to have those things in place. Going back to what I said earlier, it's important that that criteria reflects your minor hockey association and your coaching staff's philosophy. So when we talk about the coaches sitting down and talking about what drills we're going to do and how we're going to practice, it's also important to have the philosophy of we want all of our players to be agile skaters. We want them all to be able to handle the puck. We want them all to be able to do this or do this or do this. So how you want your coaches to coach, how you want your players to play is very important that you incorporate that into your evaluation process. Because to evaluate one thing and your outcome over here is totally different doesn't make any sense. So you want to try and put those things in place where you have some continuity from the evaluation process. Communicating that selection criteria. Make sure everybody knows. Make sure all the parents know. It's okay if your son or daughter falls down. 9 times out of 10 that tells us, you know what, they're actually going hard. They're trying. They're challenging themselves. Make sure all the parents know that if your player in any of the scrimmages does not pass the puck, does not do this, does not do that, does not use teammates, that will actually be a negative against them, so that they understand that the game is a team game. Because you have to be able to see how these kids can participate in an actual live game situation with their teammates. It's not just about one player trying to do everything by themselves. Those are important components to look at. Evaluation tools, and I'll show you again a couple of things that we have at the end of the presentation. There's a lot of links to some evaluation materials and tools that you guys can use. But have something standard. Don't just have people up there at the rink with a clipboard just saying, well, I think this player's a 7, this player's a 6. Have an actual set of criteria that you want to evaluate on. Is it skating? Is it puck handling? Is it transition? I also recommend you put some intangibles in there. Hockey sense, competitiveness, gameplay. Because like I said, you're going to see some kids that wheel around the pylons really, really well, but you get them into a game and they never touch the puck. And some kids who aren't as fast or don't look as good in the skills things, they're the ones in the game that have the puck on the stick all the time that are scoring goals, making plays. Okay? And it's important as well that you meet with the evaluators to look at, are we consistent? At the end of your sessions, you should have someone who's coordinating the evaluation process to say, why in this one player are we having a range in scores from here to here? Because those are the things that get people into trouble. That means we're not looking at the same thing, we're not on the same page. And not all your evaluators are necessarily going to agree. But you guys as the people in the Minor Hockey Association are the ones who should be responsible for putting that together, because more often than not, you guys are the ones who have to answer the questions from the parents, the emails, and the phone calls. So we're putting all these things in place and making sure that it's visible and everyone has a chance to look at it and see it and understand it. You're going to put a lot more minds at ease, and you're going to put people in a position where they understand what's going on. Other issues that happen a lot, maintaining players' privacy. You're going to have parents call you after the first skate, wow, where's my son or daughter? Are they moving up? Or after the second skate, or the third skate, or the fourth skate. Sometimes during a skate, they're calling, they're trying to put you aside. You know, he fell in the corner, but there was something on the ice, so it's not really their fault. We need to make sure that we maintain the players' privacy. I'm not a big fan of putting something up on the website saying, here's the players that made it. If your name's not on the list, you didn't. That stuff with social media now goes around so fast. I'm not a big fan of putting signs on the doors where kids are told, if you didn't make it and your name's not on here, you know why. In all situations, it's not necessarily easy or efficient to actually make a phone call or send an individual email, but those little personal touches go a long way. A lot of kids are crushed when they don't make that team that they want to make. And it's even worse when all their friends and everyone else knows about it at the exact same time they do. No one's had a chance to talk to, and the parents haven't had a chance to figure things out yet. And it's all over school, it's all over Facebook, it's all over Twitter, it's all over everywhere. And that usually happens a little bit more at the higher levels. But at the same time, you want to maintain the player's privacy. It's no fun when you're 10 or 12 or 13, even 14, finding out that you didn't make it at the same time as all your peers. Competent evaluators, okay? You want to make sure that it's done professionally. You don't want evaluators leaving the rink, walking through the lobby saying, wow, 10 blue was brutal today. You don't want them talking to their buddies. Yeah, you know what, I think based on the skate tonight, your son or daughter is going to be fine. He or she's going to make that team. You don't want that talk going on outside the rink. That's something that should be there, because now the rumors start going. People saying, oh, well, the team was picked before we even started, so why are we even going through this process? Those are things you want to make sure that you stop before they even start. The evaluators, again, they have to be competent. Make sure that we're all looking for the same things. Communicating, again, is important. Wherever possible, if it can be an individual email, if it can be a phone call, let that person know first if they did make it or they didn't make it before the entire world does. Because that's a hard thing to do. As soon as a kid makes a team, guess what? Nowadays, they're on the phone texting their buddies. And when they text their buddy and say, hey, I made the team, I'm so happy, and that kid didn't, it's a crushing blow for a lot of boys and girls. So we need to try and find ways to do this in a way that's efficient, communicating properly. And again, I don't expect people to hold an exit meeting with Atom players or Pee Wee players necessarily, but figure out a process where you can communicate to the parents, where you can communicate to the child. Also, with the coaches of those teams, let the coaches know why are these kids on the A team or the B team or the C team, or again, whatever your classification are, so the coaches understand. So the coaches can see, well, these players are all here because they are a little bit weaker in skating, or they're lacking this or lacking that, because it's all going to lead into the next part, which is on the actual development component. Evaluation doesn't just have to be at the start of the season. It's important for coaches and associations to actually evaluate at various points throughout the season. Yes, usually at the beginning of the season it's about selecting players for your team, but it also should be during the season at some point. Encourage your coaches to evaluate. Where are the kids at? Where have they come? How much have they gotten better? So it's not just something that's done in the first week to put our kids on team and then we don't worry about it. Okay? And again, at different levels, there may be situations where they're identifying or selecting players for a short-term competition. Peter mentioned the Director's Cup or some different things, or the Pee Wee skills that are going on. There may be opportunities where other players are going to get evaluated during the season for another event. So evaluation isn't just at the beginning, it should be done during, and there's also the aspect of short-term competition. But for the association, it's really important to try and appreciate the benefits and the value of creating that formal evaluation and selection plan. Put it down on paper, talk with the coaches, talk with people in your organization, and decide how should we put this together, what should we do. Understand the different needs and processes involved in the different types of evaluation situations. If you're in a larger center, you might have a AA or a AAA. In a small community, you might only have 2 teams in Atom or 2 teams in Pee Wee. So figuring out what is the thing that we're actually trying to do from this point. And then develop that criteria, a practical process for the administration, and then probably to me the most important thing is the actual development and interpretation of the data. There are a lot of people out there who will bring in outside evaluators and they'll have timing gear and they'll do all kinds of different things like that, and they get your sheet. And here's graphs and charts, and they look at it and say, where are my players at, or where does my son or daughter stand? And they look at it and says, well, here's your scores. Okay, well, what do I do to get better? What does this mean? And it's like, well, we just do the testing. We don't have a development component. So if you're looking at bringing in outside groups or you're developing a process where it's that formal, make sure that you also have the ability to understand the information so that players, parents, coaches can do something with it. So I'm going to show you a couple videos. We use 8 basic tests that we use to evaluate players. This one is a quickness and agility. Very simple. In this situation, we have timing gear on the ice, but from an association standpoint, you can do the exact same drill. And you don't need timing gear, you don't even need stopwatches. You can tell very quickly just by watching this which kids are agile on their feet, who's quick, who's not. Very, very simple. So if you have the ability where you actually want to get more advanced, you can use that drill. We use that drill with our under 17 level players, our under 18 World Juniors even. But this can be done with a novice level player. That exact same drill. Then we go and we use the exact same drills with a puck. And you can tell right away without having timing gear stopwatches, the basic level of skills required to be agile, to be quick. Not only are drills like that good for evaluation, but they're good for development. You could do this drill over and over and over in practice, and you will see an improvement in your players. So that's forward skating, agility, puck control, quickness. The next thing we do is transition. You'll be able to see right off the bat which players can pivot better one way than the other, which ones can't pivot from forward to backward, backward to forward. Again, you'll be able to determine very, very quickly just by watching. So again, trying to get some consistent drills together that all the evaluators, everyone's looking at to evaluate what are the things we are looking for in this drill to see if they can actually do it or not. And it's very easy to put down 2 or 3 key points, and all the information we have on all of these. Here's 3 key points we're looking at with that drill. Can they do this? Yes. No. Yes. Then again, we do the same thing with a puck. And these are all drills not only for evaluation, but they're really, really good drills for development. And anytime we do this drill, you can tell within the first 3 or 4 seconds if it's a forward or a defenseman doing these drills. Defensemen are much smoother on the transition because guess what? They do it a lot more in games. Okay? So you can tell right away if it's a forward or a D-man, especially when you get them going side to side on the comparative. But these are fundamental skills that have to happen in the game of hockey, so those are things that we should be testing. We'll also test straightaway speed. And you notice we don't go the full length of the ice because the 100 feet is what we test here is about the longest that anyone's ever going to skate in a straight line in a game. There's no point in testing, we all see the NHL stuff where they're doing a full lap of the ice. When's the last time we ever saw someone do that in a game? Doesn't happen. So all of these tests are designed around things that happen in a game because that's what you want to test for. And then we do the same thing with a puck. And a lot of times in these drills, 2 kids might reach the finish line at the exact same time, but you'll see someone who's way quicker out of the gate, so their acceleration is faster, and the other player catches them by the time they get to the end. So again, just from a pure observation standpoint, you'll notice, well, this player's got pretty quick feet. This player's faster in a strong line. So now they're in a straight line. So now you can determine, here's some different things that we need to work on from either side. Backwards as well. Things we talk about here is we want to try and eliminate crossovers. So the player did a few crossovers at the start, but as they get going, we want to see players doing less and less crossovers. Typically defensemen, already, especially as they get older, will eliminate the crossovers. The forwards, their feet are going 100 miles an hour, and they think they're going fast, but they're not really going that fast. So again, there's some key things that we can look at. And then again, we'll do the same thing with a puck. Goaltender tests, we put together 3 basic goaltender tests too. It's not about can they catch the puck, can they use their blocker, it's about movement. Because movement and skating ability for goaltenders is the most important thing. There's people that will put tests out there where they're trying to shoot pucks at the goalie's glove. It's never consistent for the goalies. Some pucks are higher, lower, harder, softer. No goalie is ever going to get the exact same shots from the coach. So we're trying to eliminate factors where the goalie can't control it. So basic movements like this, easy to do. Movement patterns, okay? And again, there's timing gear on the ice here, but these are exact same drills you can do with your goalies to see what is their skating ability. Can they skate forward? Can they skate backwards? Can they shuffle equally well to the left and to the right? Then you incorporate a slide. 9 times out of 10, the goalies who are the best on their skates and move the best are also the ones who can use their hands the best as well. Because they're more balanced, they're better on their skates. A lot of kids can stand there and not even move and use their gloves and hands, but as soon as you have to start putting movement ability in there, now everything changes. So you want to be doing things that will actually test movement and physical literacy versus just being able to stand there and let a puck hit them. So again, 8 simple drills. We have a complete package on our website for using this as a way for evaluation. Our recommendation is minimum 5 sessions to evaluate players. 2 of them are skill focused, and a lot of times the first ice session we'll go through all those drills without a puck. Give the kids lots of repetition, 4, 5, 6 times to go through so they can figure out the pattern, then they can also figure out how to do better at it. Day 2, we'll add pucks. So now they have to do everything with a puck. Day 3 is where we start getting into some scrimmage, into some small area games, so we can see where the translation is from the skill set to hockey sense, to competitiveness, to aggressiveness, all those types of things. Then your last 2 sessions, in reality, should be full-on games, because you want to see how kids can perform in a game-like setting. But it can't just be all skill, it can't just be all games. It should be all-encompassing if you actually want to do that. So again, determine your selection criteria. I would say avoid only arbitrary scales. So don't just put a 2 and a 5 and a 7. Encourage evaluators to put some notes so that there's more than just a number there. So when parents ask or coaches ask, you can actually have something to go back to and say, well, it wasn't just sorry, all they had down there was a 2. I don't know what they meant. Have some little comments in there about what was good, what was a challenge. Okay? So some intangibles that aren't included in just a number system is making sure that that is an option. Okay? And again, the tools have to be easy for players or parents to understand. Make sure that they know what the result is and where they're going from there. So for example, in Adam, we have one of these for every age group. Here's all the skill set that should be introduced or taught to Adam. So obviously it's going to be hard for you guys to read, but you'll get it in the package at the end. And this basically covers all the skills that Adam players need to know. The evaluation process is designed on what are the skill set that these kids need to know. Adams don't need to know power play, so there should be nothing that you're evaluating on, oh, this kid's great on the power play, or the penalty kill, or forecheck, or any kind of system. It should all be about the skill sets and the concepts. So when you get this presentation at the end, when you click on this, there's an actual sheet for a minor hockey association evaluation that you can use. There's also one for Adam. There's also one that we use with our high performance players. So an example of the one that we use for Adam, in this sheet, you can put all the kids' names in across the top. So you can put the names in. Here's the different criteria: skating, forwards, backwards, pivots, quickness, all kinds of things. At the bottom, you get into some intangibles. And you can actually put scores in down this column for each player on each of those different skills. At the end, it will automatically total for you an overall rank of where those players are at. So it's a way for you to look at it and say, well, player 1 was really good in forward skating, really weak in backward skating. Player 10 was the opposite. So it'll give you a very, very clear snapshot of where all the kids are from a skill set. Because this is just an Excel file, you can go through and change any of these criteria that you want. So that's, again, where the association, where you guys can go back and look at what do you want to evaluate players on, what is the criteria, and you can put those in. So you can make them your own. And all the coaches can agree, this is what we're going to do. At the end of it, each individual player will get their own little report card. And there's room in here if you do an evaluation at the start of the year, if you want to do an evaluation at the second or maybe third at the end, and some places for comments. These are also forms that we'll use for team selection, where all the players in that group, their numbers or penny, or their names or penny numbers will be across the top, and those are the skills that we're going to test on, and we give them the scores, we give them the comments. So again, we have more than just the arbitrary number in place. And a very good practice would be, once you get down to your final teams, is to give this sheet to the coach. And say, here's the scores, how they all evaluated, here's why these kids are on your team. So now a coach has a starting point of where we are. So they understand, why are all these kids on this team? And you're going to start to see that all the numbers of the kids in that group are very, very similar. You might have a few outliers here and there, but at the end of the day, you are actually putting together a process to identify kids that are in groups of skill likeness, so you can actually do more from a development standpoint. Over time, you will be able to determine averages. And whether you use a timing gear to actually time or you're just using pure scores, you will be able to do something like we've done here. So this is our under 17 scores. Over time, we've been able to say the best score in this is 4.07 seconds, 4.04, 3.92 in each of the different years. So you start to get some data that you can use to compare from year to year to year. And again, those are the 8 skills that we've used. So if you have timing gear, even if you want to use stopwatches or just the arbitrary number, you'll be able to use something like this to compare year after year after year to see where they're at. Because you're going to see some kids who might have been very, very weak this year, but the coach did a really, really good job and all those players improved. You can also use that as an evaluation tool for coaches, not just wins and losses. So to make the scorecard simple, this is what it prints off like. So Victor Mete is with the Montreal Canadiens now, is one of the guys that are under 17 program. When you put all the scores in, like I said, it'll total them up. His overall rank was number 1. That doesn't mean he was first in every single testing category. He was 21st in this one, but he was 6th, 3rd, 1st, 2nd, 1st. What it does is it takes the average scoring out of all the tests and comes out with the average number. So when you put all the players and you average all the scores together, he ends up being the number 1 ranked player. So it shows the average. What was the average amongst all these players and their scores? What was the best score? And then we also show some of the under 18 or CHL best. But those are ways that we use it. And we use the exact same tests year after year after year, so we're comparing apples to apples. Again, with using this, when we look at the scorecard, we can see, well, he was 21st in this one here. That's an area that that player needs to work on, that player needs to develop. Doesn't mean we stop working on the other ones, but it starts to highlight some of the areas where players can really improve. So just to show you a few things from our national team program that we look at in 4 key areas. And so depending, again, on the level of your teams, on physical performance to be evaluated, endurance, speed, agility, strength. So physically, where are they at? Technical performance, okay? So skating, backwards, pivots, puck handling, shooting, checking, etc. Okay? Tactical performance, so positional play, forechecks, back checks, those types of things. So again, like I say, maybe your higher end peewees or bantams or midgets, you can use these kinds of things. And then mental performance factors, okay? Emotional control, do they prep for competition? Attention to detail, little things like that. Those are all criteria that you can use as a baseline with players as they get older. Okay, we look at 4 key areas. Talent. We look for players who have elite hockey sense, how they play the game with and without the puck, the ability to make decisions. So we talk about some of the intangibles. That's a major component. For us, again, international level skating, speed, quickness, agility, mobility. Okay? I would suggest for peewees, bantam, midgets in the province of Manitoba, compare it against your Director's Cup or your Hockey Manitoba high performance or program of excellence camps. What is it about these things that players need to have in order to make one of those teams or to be on the radar for a Hockey Manitoba high performance program? And then puck skills. So that's where we look at it from a talent side. Competitiveness. We want kids who love the game, that want to play. Okay? Show up every night. They embrace the opportunity. They want to be out there in the last minute of a period. They want to be out there all the time. They have enthusiasm. They have a presence for the game. Those are all components from competing that we want to see in players. Determination, work ethic, second effort. Do they give up on pucks? Will they keep going? So these are all traits that we look for generally in players aside from skill level. Do they engage? We've all heard the terminology, oh, this player is a perimeter player. They're always on the outside. They're never really right in there. So these are all things that we look at. Aggressiveness. Okay, puck battles. Are they hard to play against? Do they challenge opponents? So these are all criteria that, again, your higher level peewees, your bantams, your midgets, you can incorporate some of these traits in there when you're looking at identifying and evaluating players. Character. Okay, team first attitude. Do they want to win? We've all seen the kids that really, really want to win. And we've all seen the other kids, don't really care. I got 3 goals today. We didn't win, but it doesn't really matter. I got 3 goals. Those are all things that you want to look at. Okay? Are they good people? Are they respectful in the rink? Are they respectful to the rink attendants, to the referees, to the opposition? Or are these the kids that are spitting all over dressing room floors, leaving garbage, leaving tape all over the place? These are all things that come into play. Are they well behaved in hotels, restaurants, different things like that? Those all come into helping you determine the type of players you have in your organization and the type of players you want to have. For us, this is a really tough one for a lot of players when players get to a national team. Most of those kids are the best kids in their areas, but now all of a sudden someone's going to be a fourth line winger or the seventh defenseman. Can they handle that? Do they have the ability to accept a role? So again, at higher levels, you're going to have to look at some of those things. Expectations, professionalism, preparation, performance. These are all things that you can start to build even with your younger players as part of an evaluation criteria, evaluation process. Okay? How do they represent that team? How do they represent your hometown? These are all important things. Having a skilled team, but you're embarrassed when they leave a town from a tournament, probably isn't a good thing either. So there's lots of factors to look in, and all of this comes down to me, is your criteria, your philosophy as an organization. How do we want to play the game? How do we want to act? They're all things that we should be evaluating all the time. So for summary, for talents, we're looking at hockey sense, skating, puck skills. Okay. Competitiveness is drive, determination, effort, aggressiveness. Team first attitude, winning disposition, aggressiveness again, expectations. In the 3 levels of the evaluation forms that I showed you, with the bottom one, which is more for, again, those bantam or midget level players, all of these are criteria in there that you can base evaluations on. They are the intangibles that coaches or evaluators can also put in place to look at. Okay? Evaluation, just a little example here. 16-17 season, PK Subban just got traded for Shea Weber. Looking at the stats there, okay, 10 goals versus 17, 25 versus 30, points, penalty minutes, plus 20, minus 8. Just at a glance, right away, Montreal Canadiens won that trade in the first year. In the second year, it's the opposite. Typically, the third year in a situation like this is where you're really going to tell, is this player the player that we thought they were? Now, Weber's got a knee injury, so he's not going to play, so this year is going to be hard to tell. But the point of the matter is, don't just necessarily judge things on one weekend, 1 month, or 1 season, because things can totally change around from season to season, from one to the next. So the key thing is, understand skills required by players for skill performance at the higher levels. So understand, what do these players from Atom going into Pee Wee need to know, from Pee Wee into Bantam, Bantam into Midget, because those are the things that are going to help you in your development path along the way. Understand how to improve those skills. So again, getting that score sheet after the teams are picked and giving that to the coach to say, here's why your players are on this team, here's their strengths, here's the weaknesses, will help them to understand what are the things that we need to do. These players didn't evaluate well in these areas because of this and this and this. So knowing what that is, very, very important. And then performing drills that will improve the skills every time. So again, just to get the scores, get the testing done and hand that out. If you don't actually have a plan after that to do something with it, your evaluation process probably isn't the best use of time, unless you're actually going to do something with it development-wise after. So it's identifying those skill needs, okay? Develop, make resources available to coaches. Design that productive yearly plan. Where do we want to get our players to? Not just in September, October, but November, all the way through. So coaches have a guideline saying, again, based on our evaluation and our criteria, here's the things we need to improve. Here's the plan we're going to put in place to do it. I would recommend once that happens, you would get your team is do an overall assessment of the team. Do an overall assessment of position specific, so assessment of defensemen, defensemen of forwards, okay, or goaltenders. Look at your D-core as a group. Say, can all our defensemen skate? Can they all make a good first pass? So again, we have to continually evaluate to see where we're at beyond just the pure selection. And then it comes down to the overall assessment of the individual players. What can and can't they do? It doesn't have to be much more complicated than that. After that, it's about selecting a course or plan of action that will fulfill that objective. Again, from the standpoint of getting your scores, understanding where your players are at, you have to have a plan. And decisions are difficult to make correctly when information gathered is unclear or vague. Good example of this, a buddy of mine was coaching Bantam AAA a couple of years ago. At the end of the year, one of his goalies had a goals against average that was higher than his save percentage. So if you think about that for a second, the stats showed he let in on average 6.74 goals a game. His save percentage was 6.7. People just look at the stats and go, wow, this kid couldn't stop a beach ball. Well, they were on a weak team, got a ton of shots from good scoring areas. Kid got peppered every single night. The following year, if someone was just to look at those stats and say, this kid has terrible stats, can't stop anything, and you don't select him, you could be making a big mistake. 3 years later, that kid's the best goalie in Alberta in his age group. Versus a player who has really good stats, a really low goals against average, and a really high save percentage, might have been on a very, very strong team, got 12 shots a game, they're all from the perimeter, from the outside. You don't really know if that goalie's good or not. The team was so good in front of him. So again, at different levels, when you're looking at that, I know people, analytics and things are getting more and more important in the game. Don't just look at what the stats were at the end of the year. Don't just look at plus minus or goals against or things like that. There's a lot more things you need to look into than just those situations. So from a skill development component after the evaluation process, and it's important to know where the players are at, where do they need to get to. For a lot of associations, you're bringing in skating coaches or skills coaches or different things like that. It's important to make sure you're working with them so that everyone is on the same page. Then when you say we need to improve quickness, that person is actually going to be improving quickness. If you're sending your kids to an outside program, which a lot of parents will do, especially when they have access to it, understand what is that goalie coach or that skating coach teaching them when they're not with your team concept, because that can cause a lot of issues. So it's important to just get as much information as you can. And at the end of the day, the drills that you're going to use to try and improve based on what the evaluation criteria is are only effective if they're executed properly. Coaches, instructors need to execute, demonstrate, correct technique, and then it has to be repetition. So based on the evaluation process, you determine, our defensemen really need to work on their foot speed. You can't just work on foot speed once and expect it to change. It has to happen again and again and again, over and over and over. So at the end of the day, the evaluation process should serve twofold. Number one, to be able to group your kids of similar skills together in team selection, but more importantly, it's the development process after. What are we going to do with that information? The kids are on this team. What are we going to do to develop? So again, from the resources we talked about, Hockey Canada Network app or Drill Hub, we've got tons of videos that coaches can utilize that are all determined based on a certain set of skills. If you want to improve skating, I got a bunch of examples in here. When you guys get the presentation, you'll be able to watch the full videos. Quick feet, tight turns, acceleration. We put all that stuff together. So again, we really believe that the evaluation process is one part of it, but it's actually development after. So if you wanted to use the process, use those drills, there are a ton of links that we've put out there for drills to say, here's drills to improve. Here's things you can do to improve these scores. Okay, again, simple drill on transition. Okay, you want to work on foot speed of defenseman, transition capabilities. Here's a video of a simple drill that coaches should be using to improve this type of thing on players. We'll do it without a puck. We'll do it with a puck. Puck control. Again, lots of videos that we'll put in place and say these are all skills and drills that coaches should be doing to improve the puck handling / skating abilities of their players. So again, everything is really self-contained. It's almost in a box. Here's drills. Here's sheets that you can use to record. Here's a process to go through and determine how you want to do this. And then at the end, there's drills and skills for improvement if you want to really truly make your players and your coaches better. There's a complete manual on our website called Player Evaluation that has all kinds of different scenarios. If you have 100 kids, 20 kids, 40 kids, 80 kids, whatever the numbers are, some ideas on how you can put together the process. And again, every association is going to be different. Some of you might only have one team. So you say, well, why do we have to have evaluations or tryouts? Well, you probably don't. But you can still use the skills and the process to do an evaluation of the players to figure out where they need to get to. Some of you might have 20 teams in an age category, or 10, or 12, or 3, or 7. It's never the same. But at the end of the day, there are things that you still want to be able to evaluate to move from there. And then it even gets into some more tactical stuff from a defenseman-specific things. Do your defensemen have the ability to escape? Do they have the ability to be agile on their feet? And then again, without a puck, with a puck. Everything starts without a puck. If they can do it there, progress to with a puck. And you're trying to look at what can they do, what can't they do. Because that's the big determining factor in the entire process. So again, in the presentation and the links, all the videos are included. There's lots of other links in there for things when you get this, to be able to look at what's the process, what are the sheets we can use to record scores, how can we go through and make this a component. And like I said at the start, I think when parents understand that the evaluation process is only a small part of it, but it's the development that we're actually aiming for after, your process in your associations is going to be much smoother, and you're going to have a lot less issues. We've been doing it the same way in our association in Calgary for quite a few years now, but we're actually at a point where we have very, very few complaints. People are fully aware of what the testing process is, the evaluation process, the number of sessions, what we're looking for. And when we publicize that and we tell all the parents that this is actually what we're evaluating on, they're less likely to have the opinion that teams are pre-selected, that players are placed here already. It's not based necessarily on the previous year. It might start that way, but as we move players through the process, they basically slot out where they should be. And with this, we have a lot of different skills that we show with World Junior players and things like that, and just saying basic evaluation. If your kids can't handle the puck in a small area like this, guess what? We need to keep working on it. And since this is Connor McDavid, that means everybody needs to work on this if you want to be at that level. But they're simple drills to evaluate. You don't have to get complicated. And you'll be able to tell very, very quickly which kids can do it, which kids can't. But doing these types of things, not only from an evaluation, but a development standpoint, will make it come to fruition. So again, there's links here. We put all the drills for improvement are in there. So when you get this, you'll be able to link on that right away. So again, just a copy of a slide that I borrowed from Max Analytics. Okay, the development cycle, so evaluation, skills, tactics, gameplay, the feedback on skills, tactics, gameplay, and the development. So associations, coaches, parents, players. Okay, that should really be the cycle that we're looking at, is making sure that all of these tie in. If any one of these is independent of the other, okay, you're going to find yourself with some challenges. And then basically resources, okay, network app, it's a free download. If you want the premium component, yes, there is a fee to that, but it's included in coaching clinics. All the evaluation criteria and drills and everything that we use is on there. So you can view it right on the app. And then the drills and everything that we've linked to are on the Drill Hub, which again is free off our website. Hundreds of drills on there. There's no cost to that at all. Okay? And so in coaching tips for evaluation, evaluation tips for players and parents, and then the development component that goes with it. So it's not just saying do this to evaluate. Here's also the recipe, or here's the plan after the evaluation to continue the development process. So the resources are all there. They're easy to find. And again, the biggest thing I can say is there is not one size fits all evaluation process for associations. It's something that you're going to have to look at, and you're going to have to make some tweaks and adapt to what your own specific needs are. Competition with other cities, other towns, all those things have to come into play. But again, to reiterate the fact of having a plan and having things in place are going to make it a lot easier for you, and it'll be Might be a bit of a challenge if you change a bunch of things the first year, but over time it'll get consistent and standardized, and it'll make it a lot easier on yourselves. At the end of the day, the beginning of the season is a stressful time of the year. We want to make sure that we're putting things in place that are going to make it easier for ourselves, more transparent, and ultimately develop better coaches and better players. So, thank you very much. Is there any questions on anything that anyone has?